Trina and Heather know what it means to be unstoppable. From humble beginnings, they followed these core principles to unimaginable success. The problem at hand? Medical scrubs. They're baggy and they fit horribly. They even advertise your size in big, bold letters for all the world to see. The duo didn't wait for the silver platter. They didn't wait for venture capital or a perfect game plan or feasibility studies. Their new business, a company called Figs, was born. Figs scrubs were a total departure from the norm. Trina and Heather, they kept on keeping on. The result? Less than 6 years after selling prototypes from the trunk of their car, Trina and Heather led the company through an IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. And at the end of opening day, the company was valued at $6.8 billion. Life knocks us all down at one point or another. Those setbacks are just to test our resolve. But now, you have a choice. Will you let those challenges define you? Or now that you have all the tools you need, will you instead decide to become unstoppable? Thank you. Hey everybody, I'm Trish and welcome back to The Hunt. So you know by now that on this show we talk a lot about motivating and inspiring, encouraging stories. And so I'm so excited to introduce to you my next guest today. It is Coach Jim Aziere. He is a lot of things, so we're going to dive right in and talk to him. But he's a coach, he's an educator, and most recently, the author of the book, The 16th Street Chronicles, Where Violence Met Character. Super fascinating, very riveting memoir. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Trish. Very exciting to be here.
Yes, so good to see you. Thanks so much for joining. I'm so excited to talk to you. You're in Kansas, right?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
Kansas City, Missouri, yes.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for being here. I just want to talk to the audience for a little bit first about who you are and all of your amazing accomplishments. I mean, just the fact that you were a teacher for 35 years, and keep me honest on that, a coach for 57, just been dedicated your life basically to education and improving just the lives of human beings that you've been able to touch in so many different ways. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Well, it's been a great journey for me. I started off in a Catholic school teaching. Most of my time has been public schools. I've had a really good opportunity to see kids in every perspective. I even taught in Central America for 1 year and coached at the University of Kansas as a graduate assistant. So I've had a pretty broad experience.
Yeah, really just amazing. And then you got into coaching and swim in particular, correct? And you did some stuff with the Olympics.
Right. I never planned on being a swimming coach. I never swam. First meet I ever actually coached, I was the head coach. It was the first meet I ever saw. And it was a kind of a weird experience doing that, but we started off very well and had it very successful. And it's kind of been my bread and butter, my life ever since then.
Yeah, just so rewarding, I can imagine. So let's talk about the 16th Street Chronicles. I mean, this is such an incredible memoir. So why don't you give just the audience an overview of just, what it is in a nutshell, and then we'll get into some of the specifics. Because it was during a time in the United States, that doesn't really exist anymore, but it did shape a generation.
Well, actually, the book is a lot of things, and it's not just my story, it's all of our story, but it is both a tragedy and a comedy. It's a historical novel. It has a lot of history. It talks about the end of an era, which was the 1950s, a time when we had very harsh discipline. We had ghettos that were very restrictive. Schools were not integrated. And generally, we had very, very restrictive mores in this country. That was in 1950, but the book starts with my 4 years as a student. When I went to De La Salle, I was dyslexic. I flunked second grade. Even flunked the test to be an altar boy at St. Francis School. So, and when I graduated, going back to my records, my IQ was something like 87, just 2 points above being retarded. So I went into high school at De La Salle, that's 16th Street, where the school is located, which is actually the most dangerous and the hardest part of town at that time. It was a black ghetto, and the school was located there. It was a military academy, and it was a place where my whole life would change, and it would change because of the discipline of the teachers. It was the kind of teaching at the time that gave me role models, the role models of the person that I would want to be, the person that I became, and really was where I learned the secret to success. You know, what were the things in my life that would help me overcome the handicap that I had in the classroom, and would get me not into college at that time. It was a lot easier. My 14 on the ACT wouldn't get me into college today, but it was the work ethics and the character that I learned as a high school student in what I call the Black Island. So I go back there several years later as a teacher, 1967 to 1970, and that's what the second part of the book is about. And I become a different person. And again, the school and the country had changed. It's why it's a historical novel. The country was going through some real changes. We were in the counterculture at that time, and there was a lot of rejection of the old ways. We had a war in Vietnam. Many people were against the war in Vietnam. And so this is the story, the 16th Street. It's like I said, there's a lot of humor in it, and there's a lot of tragedy in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's really fascinating. And again, we talk a lot on the show about, going from point A to point B, the mindsets and the qualities that you need to have to do that. So when you were a student there, and I'm sure it was a very tough environment. I mean, I went to Catholic school pretty much my whole life through my master's, so I know the discipline associated with that. And respectfully, I think it was even more discipline, when you were going there as a student. So with dyslexia and some of the other just I guess issues that you had as a kid, how did you get through that? Because kids can be mean, especially at that young age. So, I mean, not only did you end up, surviving, but thriving, but do you remember what that felt like and what got you through that as a child?
Yeah, I remember 2 times in elementary school when we started school, when I was repeating second grade, I was like devastated. I felt like I'd been left behind, and a student walked up to me and said, "Well, we're really sorry that you're not with the class anymore." It made me feel like really awful.
Yeah.
And then later, 2 years later, when every other boy spent time after school learning how to be an altar boy, and I couldn't pass the test, so I was the only one. It's like, man, I'm really stupid. And it gave me that feeling that, I was going to be a failure all my life. We moved after that, and I went to St. Elizabeth and another school. I was kind of starting over. And so, people didn't know about my background. And that's really where I got more involved in athletics. And when I went to De La Salle, what really changed was the fact that when you were on the Black Island, you couldn't walk across the street by yourself without being in danger. We were told, the day we picked up our books and got our military uniforms, don't ever leave the area by yourself because you're dangerous. And even when you take the bus down to 15th Street, it's only like 4 blocks over. You don't wait, you don't walk over rather than wait for the bus. You wait for the bus, take that bus over just the 4 blocks. because that's how dangerous it was. And so when you get to school, every student had that same fear, and that you knew that wherever you went, that you needed your friends with you. And so everybody bonded. And it was a school that had Mexicans and blacks. It had the Croatians from Strawberry Hill, a lot of Italians. It was very multicultural.
Melting pot, yeah.
And we truly bonded. I'll just summarize, one of my classmates who actually played baseball for the Oakland A's when they won their first World
Hey, Coach
Championship.
Jim, just do me a favor. Hold that thought. We have to take a quick commercial break. I can't wait to come back and talk to you. So those of you at home, stay tuned. We'll be right back with you. You're watching The Hunt. Stay tuned.